Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we're really excited today. We're talking about an upcoming book. We love talking to writers and we love talking books on this podcast. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner. And today we have Anna Gomez here and Kristoffer Polaha is here to talk about their new book coming out, Where the Sun Rises. And I thank you both so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Rachel. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So it's been a year since we had both of you individually on the podcast. We had Chris, you came last Christmas, and then we had Casey got to interview Anna last March 2021. So that was really fun. And so I hope you all have had a good 2022. I'm just really curious. So this is now your second book that you have written together. And so I'm really curious about your process and how this all kind of happened and how this collaboration kind of works. So Chris, why don't you start kind of how you got involved in in writing at all, and then particularly with Anna, and then we can hear from Anna as well.
Sure. The truth of the story is when I was a student at NYU, I had this, his name was Professor Bly. And it was theater. It was the history of theater. And we went all the way back to the Greeks. And we would have to write these papers. And instead of writing a paper, I would write a play. And I would have my friends act in it and I would direct it. And so I kept a journal my whole life, like starting in high school, I've kept a journal, but I've never considered myself a writer. And I've known writers. My wife's brother, in fact, is a wonderful novelist, and her dad wrote books. And I just never had the chutzpah to call myself a writer or to even really, the idea of tackling a novel or anything like that. But I love telling stories. I've always told stories. I've written screenplays before. And so it wasn't foreign to me. And one day I started a production company. It's called Podunk Productions, with the aim to bring, films or ideas to places like Hallmark specifically, but also, Netflix or CBS or Fox or wherever. And I would pitch these ideas that I had. One in particular was about my dad, and the show was called St. Jerome. And it's a really great idea, but everybody was like, you need IP, man. You need IP, which is intellectual property, which is a book or an article from New York Times or a song, anything that has like something with an audience built in. And one day I was out in my field next to the house, and a neighbor of mine named Javier walked by, and Anna and Javier are friends. And Javier mentioned to Anna, my neighbor started a production company, and Anna had written 6 books under the name of Christine Bray. She is a seasoned novelist and has written and has a huge audience for her books. And she wanted to turn one of those books into a film. And her target was Hallmark as well, because obviously Hallmark has got this, it's got an amazing fan base. And so both of us were on the same page. But the books that she'd written were these really complex, beautiful, deep, nuanced romances that dealt with adultery or forgiveness or grief, and so we just had this really candid conversation on a Friday in May of 2020, like in the middle of the pandemic. Everyone was locked away for quarantine.
Yeah, it really is the middle.
Yeah. And we were both on Zoom, and I was up in my son's bedroom. I remember exactly where I was. I was in Jude's room, and Anna was there in Chicago, Indiana. And I remember just having this really kind of candid conversation with her about how difficult it is to take anything, but specifically like Hallmark and what they look for and their 9-act structure, like very specific stuff. We just had this really sort of wonderful, candid, hour-long conversation. And then I think I just flippantly was like, but if you ever wanted to write like a little Christmas book or something, like if you ever wanted, and I think I pitched this like random idea of a one-off book of a romance, and said we would own the IP, we would be able to take a book in, and it was a lark. And then Anna, without missing a beat, she was like, well, I'm actually working on a series of books. They take place in Hawaii. And I was like, oh, I know Hawaii. I lived there for a year. My son was born in Waikiki. And she's like, would you like to take this adventure with me and join me and co-write with me? And I was like, hold on a minute. We went from 1 to 5. And I said, why don't you talk to your husband, talk to your agent? Let's talk about it on Monday. And I hadn't read one of her books yet. Anna, what's the title of the book that I read?
In This Life.
In This Life. That's right. In This Life, which is about a woman who falls in love with a man who becomes a priest. There it is, In This Life. And it was beautiful. And I remember my wife saying, like, what are you thinking of doing? And I said, well, I'm thinking of like co-authoring romance novels with this woman. And she's like, what, like, is it going to be Harlequin? Is it going to be like lit porn? And so I'm reading In This Life, waiting for the, the page where it turns into like, purple throbbing, thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. And it never did. Like, it was just this beautiful story. And it ran on the same frequency that I run on. Like we run on the same frequency. And so all of a sudden I was so excited, and I went on Monday to that Zoom call, really excited to, possibly have this potential future collaboration. But I'm also used to a business where everything is exciting on the front end, and then it all turns to shit pretty quick because it all falls apart. You're like, well, I thought this was going to be, and then it all just kind of dissolves. And people love to say, yeah, let's do lunch, and they never show up. And yeah, we'll do this thing, and it never manifests. And so I'm used to disappointment, and I'm very used to the no. But I got on that Zoom call on a Monday, and Anna was like, my agent thinks it would be an awesome idea. My husband's on board. Like, he doesn't care. Let's go for it. And we had paperwork signed on Wednesday.
Wow.
Less than a week later, and we had our first book published a year, like less than a year later. We had it in shelves, on bookshelves, March, what was it, in 11th or 20?
Yeah.
March 9, 2021. And the process itself was just, I couldn't have done it without her. She was a mentor to me and a friend, and somebody who taught me nuances about writing that I didn't know what I didn't know. And Anna was there to gently guide me along the way. And what's crazy is we've never even met in person. We're about to meet October 11th for the first time at Bel Canto Bookstore in Long Beach. So it's been this really cool friendship. And it went from a writing partnership / relationship work thing to an actual friendship. Like, Anna and I call each other and we check in, and we have, we share personal stories about our lives. And I think she knows my schedule better than I do. Like, literally text me and be like, are you going to be on the Zoom call in 5 minutes? I'll be like, oh yeah, thanks.
Well, Anna, that was pretty bold of you to just be like, let's do it. Let's, for somebody that you didn't know that, so that's pretty cool. What inspired you to kind of go for it?
I think I just had such a positive feeling when I was talking to him. I mean, we hit it off right away. I really didn't think he'd call. So when Javier told me, like, yeah, I'm just gonna ask him if he wants to go on a call, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then I get an email from Chris, and I'm just like, okay, he's gonna call. And we forgot the part about we were wearing striped shirts.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We were like literally wearing the same outfit, which we are. Like, yesterday, by the way, we were both in white. Today we're both in gray.
Yeah, you're both kind of wearing the same color.
It's weird, and we don't plan this out. Like, it's weird.
But yeah, it was just, I mean, I thought it would be a 10-minute call, and it turned out to be an hour, and we were just talking about everything. And he was very specific and articulate about the industry. Like, Chris walked me through, like, it's not that easy. You have to have your own IP, and then you have to sell it. And then that's the only way that you get a say in what in what you want on film or translated. And so it was that conversation, and it just gave me a good feeling. And so I've never really shied away from being impulsive. Like, I've never done that. I've always jumped in, and whenever I had a good feeling about it. And Chris knows that. Jobs, family things. And so I just blurted it out.
Yeah.
You never know where that leads. I mean, he could have said no after, and I was really nervous because I told him, before you say anything, because we were gonna go away for the weekend and think about it, but I said, please read my book, because you just read parts of it, just make sure that the way that I convey my words is how you'd be able to put your name to that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the way sort of the like gig economy, for lack of a better word, kind of works, that you kind of jump into one project and then something, and then you always have to be kind of saying yes to the next project, when you work, as all of us work, that something will kind of fall apart, and then, okay, I'm going to say yes to this next thing. And I don't know, I think that's how things work these days.
Yes and no. I mean, we do
Yeah.
have choices.
Sure.
Yeah, and I have a gig after a full-time gig and outside of this, and so does Chris. So it was kind of, I mean, I know it took only 3 days, but we did have to really think about it because it was a big commitment. I mean, here I am asking this guy I don't know to write 5 books with me. And I kept saying, you have an out. We can do 3. We can do 2. And he's like, no, we're doing 5.
Yeah,
That's great.
we agreed on 5. And it's funny the way that like I like to think that God is in charge of all of this stuff. But if you're a listener and you're like, I don't believe in God, but I will say that the universe works in funny ways, whatever you want to say. About a month before, I was in the grocery store and I was shopping, and I noticed all these books, and I noticed that there was a whole section of romance novels. And I was like, it'd be an amazing way to enlarge my footprint is to have my name on a romance novel in a books, like in a shopping market or store, because Hallmark has this incredible fan base, and they plug 2 literary devices all the time: the romance novel and the mystery novel, which are the biggest sellers in books. And so my mind was already like, and I had started working on a kid's book. I had this vision of a kid's book at the beginning of the pandemic, and had in a fever pitch wrote this little children's book and was already looking for an illustrator. And so the books were on my mind when Anna and I met. And so it was interesting that when she came into my life, the work, like there was already this thing set in motion, so that I was unafraid to accept her yes. I must have been putting some out there for her to be, for her to offer it. I mean, it's just the fact that we met through Javier, the fact that it all came together, the fact that we get along so unbelievably well and have a fluid like relationship where it's, we will hit it hard and we will get books done, and then we decompress and we will just take a little break. But we still, in those breaks, we're still texting, and we're still, I remember the first time I gave Anna, I guess, permission. I was like, text me whenever you want. Like we don't have to stand on ceremony as far as like setting a time to call and doing the thing like once a week, like just, and all of a sudden it was like, I'd shoot her a text at like 10 o'clock my time, which is 12 o'clock her time. And I'm like, is Bill cool with this? And she's like, yeah, Bill doesn't, he's fine. And it's really cool because like, I include our spouses in the conversation because it really is that healthy, and that like it is truly 2 families like joining together. I can't wait to meet Anna. I'm going to meet her family in Chicago. It really is this cool thing that is totally unexpected.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even like talking about it because you don't want to ruin it, but this is the product,
Yeah.
we've got 2 books, and they're just truly, truly wonderful. They're escapism. They're all about love, and they're about love in a way that, what we wanted to move away from was, we wanted to move away from lust and really dive in on what it means to love somebody and fall in love with somebody. And I think we accomplished that with book 1, which is called Moments Like This. And I think we doubled down with Where the Sun Rises in a way that I think is going to surprise our readers and the people who really liked Moments Like This.
I got a message yesterday, Chris, from one of the Christine Bray readers, and to tell me that Maylee was her favorite heroine of everything I've written.
You know why that's exciting is because the Bray's butterflies are used to
Crying.
Bray, writing these kind of like really gritty, like deep, hard-hitting romances. and Moments was very frothy and very kind of light, and we wanted it to be escapism. And our target, and by the way, Anna, we had one target at the beginning of the book, and by the time we finished,
It slipped.
we had shifted our target, and we were like, you know what, let's jettison the idea of making a book specifically for the Hallmark Channel, and let's just tell the love story that we want to tell. And if we are going to make it a movie, let's just make a beautiful romance for theaters. And then we completely like this is its own universe. Like this dumps into a whole nother level of storytelling.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
So how does the collaboration work between the two of you? So Anna, do you write, say, a section and then send it off to Chris, and then and then you add to it, or how does that work?
So this book was really a different process from Moments. It was new to both of us in the sense that we had so much happening around us. We were coming out of COVID. Life was trying to get back to normal, families and everything were just very demanding of our time and certain events that happened. And so we kept at it. And the way that we were doing this was pretty new in the sense that I really depended on what he wrote. So we were really like doing the volleying of the chapters. He would write one chapter and I would write one chapter, and then we would keep going. And sometimes somebody would fall down and like not have time. And so the other person would pick up where we left off. And so, people will think that we, for example, this has two perspectives, this book. People will think that he wrote the guy and I wrote the girl, but that's really not what happened. It was like whatever spurred that one of us to do, we would just jump in and write. So that was the process. It was different for Moments in that when Chris came in, a lot of the first eight chapters were already written. So there was kind of a flow. There were characters that I had already introduced, and then Chris just took it from there and ran with it. With this one, we really started out. I remember months ago, before the very start of the book, I wrote the first chapter and he was like, this is great. And then he just like threw the second chapter on. And then that's just how we kept going. There was a lot of times when we would talk about, like, what do you think should happen in this next scene? But it was very rare that we did that. There were times when we did that, but really it was just really, to me, it was instinctive most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew, like, we spitballed, and like, so Anna and I know where all 5 books are going. Like, we have the whole universe mapped out. We have a blueprint, and it's in our minds. It's not written down anywhere, but we have discussed, all right, here's Andy and Warren. Who do we want? And it was so fun because as we were writing Moments, we were already geared up. We were so excited about books 2, 3, 4, and 5. We were like, okay, who do we want to write about next? And so we already just started to zero in on the people that were like rising off the page to us. And so the discovery of who books 2 and 3 were going to be about lifted while we were writing Moments. And we sort of both were like, well, what about this person? And what about, and then when we decided who we were going to write about, their stories, we knew what the general story was going to be. Like, it's a girl, we know that she's, we know all the things that are going to happen, and we knew what was going to happen with Adam. And then, but an outline is very different than the meat and potatoes of writing something. And so
the character building. Yeah.
Yeah. And the character building, but like the actual meat and potatoes, the writing of it, which is it's like bushwhacking, you just keep. That was like, we did this thing called chapter tennis, and Anna would write a chapter, and then I was 100% dependent on what she wrote. And then I would read that, I'd be inspired, I would write something, I would send it back to her. And I do think I think there was 2 instances where there was like a little run of, and so you can't even say, well, Melee's all Anna, and Adam's all Chris. Like there's chapters that are, like little blocks that are all me, little blocks that are all Anna. And again, we like keeping it enshrouded of who wrote what, because it doesn't matter. And we both went in and like, as people were writing, and I was the first one guilty of this, but like going in and, as sort of edging and polishing chapters as they were being written. And so like, even as you were writing stuff, it really truly became a collaboration, in the sense that like, it's hard to take, we didn't even want credit, but it would be hard to be, I mean, technically we can be like, I know who wrote which chapter, but like within chapters, there's sentences that Hannah wrote and stuff that I wrote, and there's stuff that I wrote and stuff that she wrote. And it was just, and you can only do this if you are humble, and if you check your ego at the door. And again, Anna has set this incredible tone of leadership for this project, to be like, yes, and she values my ideas, she values my contributions, and that generosity encourages me to be generous, and I don't feel cagey, and I don't feel threatened, and I don't feel like it's tit for tat or like territorial about anything, because Anna set this incredible tone of like, here, do this thing. Come on, it doesn't matter. Join me. Let's do it. I don't care who, like, let's go. Yes. And when you have someone who gives you that freedom, I mean, it's really life-giving.
That's so cool. That's great. You can feel that in the story, and it doesn't feel like 2 different voices writing. It feels, like one author, if I hadn't known. And that's great to hear too, that that seems like you were both equal. There wasn't kind of, because we've seen that in Hollywood before, where the ghostwriter basically does most of the work. And so I'm glad
Cut
to hear.
Anna writes the whole book, and I'm like, yeah, I'll put my name on that.
And I mean, I didn't think so, but you've seen it before, so that's really great to hear that it was such an effective collaboration.
Yeah. And I think it was harder for us. I always want to point this out. 2021 was harder for us. Like, he was filming, and I had a new job. And so we were really trying to find the time to devote to this. And the fact that we were friends really helped a lot, because, whoever would just jump in, and it didn't matter who had time, who didn't. We had a goal, we had to finish a certain month. And then we would just like jump in and take care of each other, like when we were too busy. Because I mean, looking back at 2021, it was a little crazy.
Yeah.
It was really crazy.
Definitely.
Let's not forget though, that we're also both like extremely competitive, and both like A-type, goal-driven. Neither one of us gets sleep. Like it's a mystery when we sleep. Like we're both fully functioning. Like, Anna's a baller, by the way. She's like,
I think that's why we got along.
CFO of like a massive advertising firm. I mean, yeah. And so we're running on high cylinders, and I think we push each other. Like the minute I know Anna's writing, I could feel it. And I'm like, all right, what is she writing? Let me see what you got. And then I'll be like, I got to get in there too. And so I think we propel each other, and I think that's also a benefit of the collaboration.
So Anna, you had decided that you were going to write about Hawaii before even working with Chris. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what inspired you to focus on Hawaii?
My agent.
It's a mandate from the publisher.
No, you know what? I think I did. I felt like I had done my run. Like, I've had 6 books. A couple of them have hit, bestseller lists on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. And I really wanted to focus on my job. Like, I really wanted, it was a time where I said, you know what? I really love my career, and I really want to go out on top, with my career. And so I said, this is the last book I wrote the year I left. And at that time, nobody wanted to read about someone who was depressed. Like, nobody wanted to even blog about depression, because it was late 2019, that time where everybody wanted a feel good thing. And so I said, I think I've done, I've told my story. I think I'm ready to just take a break. And she said, no, there's one more thing that you need to do. Every Hallmark is looking for content. That's exactly what she said. And she said, you'd be so good if you wrote one book about anything in Hawaii. Hawaii is the best setting. People want to film there. Everyone wants to make movies there. And so I said, okay, I'll write one more book. And actually, I was sitting with my husband and I was like, what do I write about Hawaii? And the idea came from him. He was like, I'm like, pineapples. What else is that? What industry is in Hawaii? So I started reading him the different industries, and I'm like, the coffee. We were there. We loved the coffee. He's like, coffee, yes. And so, that's kind of how we started. And then that was just a few weeks after. So I started writing the first few chapters. And then a few weeks after that, it was, Chris came into the picture. So what I wrote, the universe that we built, the characters and the world that we built, I did that already when Chris was in there. So I introduced two main characters, but I introduced some minor characters. And then him and I agreed, these people, these characters are great. Like, it would be great to just like blow them out and see, who the readers love and who we can, they all have a story basically to tell.
Yeah.
And so that was built when Chris came in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that must have been fun since you, like you said, lived in Hawaii in the North Shore, Chris. Yeah. It's the best place. I love it so much.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast. My name is BJ.
And my name is Me Too. And we promise this promo is worth it, so please don't skip ahead.
We're two judgy friends who put our judgmental skills to work for you. We review the pilot episodes of new and popular shows and shows that our listeners request to answer your question, should I watch this?
Look, a lot of us are spending a lot more time at home, and yes, we should be reading and trying new projects and enriching ourselves, but does anything beat binging a great show?
Let us take the guesswork out of deciding what your next show will be. Tune in to The Pilot Podcast at thepilotpodcast.com.
Well, so we have Maylee and Adam in this book. I actually haven't read the first book, but I have read this book and I enjoyed it. Yeah. And
just
one
keep
thing,
showing the book.
yes.
You're so good.
So you have them, they have great chemistry. He helps her to get back to surfing again. He's kind of a movie star, and he's from like super rich family in on the island, and I thought you did a good job of keeping it a chase romance while still having it feel passionate. And there's definitely like several times in the book where they are very tempted, and you don't necessarily see that much in. I feel like it's usually either closed door or just completely chased. And I don't know, I liked that like tightrope walk that you did. Was that difficult? Was it difficult to Anna to write?
We went both ways, I think. I wrote a particular scene that like
I was like, I don't
all
know
the
that we
way
should
out
put that
there,
in.
and then he kind of like measured it back.
Yeah.
But the heat was always there. I think I really am proud of that, the way that we did it.
Yeah.
The chemistry was like, just to me, the chemistry was just off the charts. You can see the chemistry on the page. You can feel it. Yeah. And then I did kind of go one extreme, and he was like, nah, let's.
Yeah.
Melee's choice, the choice that Melee makes for her life, we wanted to tackle that in a way that, like, in all candidness, my wife was someone who made that same choice. And so here was this awesome baller of a woman who, wanted to wait. And Anna and I early on had this discussion, like, what would it look like to come up with a really cool character, like, who's just awesome, but he's also made this decision that gets just hammered in pop culture as provincial and silly and prudish, and what happens if you make her just a total baller? And so there really was this sort of idea of, well, she's still, like, sexuality is a gift, and being and
Yeah.
like
And she's
like
still a woman, and
yeah,
she's
she's
got
still a
this
woman, and
normal,
yeah,
you know, yeah.
yeah. And so what happens when you meet a guy who is not on that same path, and where's that blending? So it was an interesting experiment to try to capture on the page, and I'm pretty proud of how we did it. And it's true. I mean, there was a whole chapter after, the scene in that cabin, up on the North Shore of Kauai.
Mhm.
And we had written one thing, and then we kind of took it out, and we're like, you know what? And then there was another scene, yeah, that was dialed back a little early on, where Melee's alone and hanging out, and there were to me, it was just, I don't know, it was really fascinating to watch this book come into, we'd had a different timeline. Originally the first chapter was the knock on Adam's door, and we had like created actually, Andrew, do you remember the prologue with Andy and Warren, where he stepped out of the steamy shower and they like had sex on the
Yeah.
countertop?
Yes. That was our
Do you
first.
remember
And then
that?
we
And there
were
was a
like,
whole thing
oh,
of like, and it was like, they're like, the entire part one was really focused on Warren and Andy as almost a way to take the readers from one book and introduce them into the other. And then our editor was like, no, you can't. You can't do that. We don't care. Like, let them be their
Yeah.
book, and this is the new book. And
yeah.
it was interesting because it had machinations. We wrote probably 3 different books before we got to the one we have.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Rachel, if you get a chance to read Moments when you have time, you'll see the progression of what we're trying. And this is, I think we mean to do that. We want to show the progression between Moments and then where the sun rises. And then book 3 will be a little bit more. We're trying to make sure that we push it a little bit creatively, I guess.
Yeah. I'm definitely excited to read it. I will definitely read it. I mean, and I love being in the water. And so the surfing scenes were really fun. I think you did a good job capturing that.
Cool.
And I think also one thing, Rachel, you should know is that we're not trying, but we have it in mind that it's going to be a movie. So the scenes are so beautifully cinematic.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, I know you have to go for your meeting, but
Yes.
Anna, but thank you so much for talking with us. And I really did enjoy the book, and it's so cool to hear about your guys' collaboration and how you work together. It's very inspiring.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to skip out.
Yes, thanks. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. Writing duo Kristoffer Polaha and Anna Gomez are back with the second book in their From Kona with Love series, Where the Sun Rises. Dubbed as a modern Romeo and Juliet by the San Francisco Book Review, Where the Sun Rises has become a highly anticipated follow-up depicting multicultural romance, love, loss, and redemption woven into a family saga set in the beautiful islands of Hawaii. Though connected, each installment in the From Kona with Love series can be read as a standalone. The series falls into the genre of clean romance and is best known for its lush island backdrops. Says Publisher Weekly of the first installment, quote, Gomez and Polaha's descriptions of Hawaii are postcard worthy. The breezy pace and gorgeous setting will stoke readers' wanderlust, close quote. Where the Sun Rises promises to whisk readers away to the idyllic island of Hawaii. Protagonists Mele Moana and Adam Yates meet at the wedding of Mele's friend, Andy, where they are paired up in the wedding party to walk down the aisle together. Their worlds couldn't be more different. Mele is the daughter of a plantation worker, and Adam is the son of one of the richest men in Oahu. They do have one thing in common, though, big dreams that will take them into opposite shores. But that's not the only obstacle they must overcome. Adam inspires Mele to face her fears, and she restores his faith in redemption. Yet, with love comes sacrifice, and the goals they've worked so hard for may end up tearing them apart. Ultimately, Where the Sun Rises is a story about overcoming adversity, the promise of young love, and the valor in letting go. Where the Sun Rises releases on October 11th, 2022, and is available at all major retailers where books are sold. In-person and virtual book signings will be popping up in Los Angeles and Chicago during the months of October and November. Make sure to pre-order your copy of Where the Sun Rises today at your local brick and mortar bookstore, and it'll be waiting for you to enjoy on October 11th. In the meantime, immerse yourself in the Kona world by reading moments like this. More information can be found here at vesuvianmedia.com/from Kona with love. That's vesuvianmedia.com/from Kona with love. So we have to talk to you about, we wish you a Merry Christmas coming up.
Yep. Let me put on my new hat. I got to put
Yes.
on my actor hat. Okay, let's do it.
So it was perfect timing because they just released the promo last night.
Oh.
So that was the little teaser trailer thing. This
How's it look?
It looks fun, and it looked more madcappy. I was worried because some of these they've done a number of these marriage and crisis movies, usually with Nikki DeLoach. She seems to be the one for all these. And it was funny. I was talking to her at Christmas Con, and she's like, "I can do comedy. Stop putting me in these."
She's like, "Stop putting me in divorce movies."
But I've enjoyed most of them. But I was surprised to see that, at least in the promo, that this looks kind of madcap. It looks funny.
It's funny.
Yeah.
You know, what we wanted to do was, I think that a lot of the joy of Hallmark is the cute meet. And you meet these two strangers, or they used to know each other and they're new people now.
Yeah.
So they're new to each other, they're new again, and then they fall in love, and we're rooting for this brand new, fresh love, right? And we're waiting for that first kiss. When you got a married couple, they've consummated that marriage. They're down the road, and especially so you don't care about that first kiss. In my mind, I'm like, I don't really care to see these two people kiss. I know they've already
Yeah.
And so the trick that Marisol and I, the hat trick that we tried to pull off, and I think we accomplished it, was like, how do we get these two people back to that place where you're rooting for them to kiss? Like, as simple as, like, let's just make the kiss magical again, so that people are like, oh. And what we decided was that they're in that period of their relationship where it's almost like it's gotten to the point of ridiculousness of like, we're done.
Yeah.
And there's no more, and and you've lost your patience, and you've lost your etiquette. And the fun way to do that, I think, the way that you want to see, because I think a lot of people are in that same situation who are probably watching Hallmark, and they're like, I don't want to see a couple break up. That's depressing.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of my life. But how do you see a couple revive that and resuscitate a marriage? And I think you have to do that with a great deal of humor, and you have to just kind of lose your ego. And that's what these movies are. I mean, you walk onto set, and it's about the leading lady, and you just kind of give over to the will of the woman.
So you all are like traveling, and you get stuck in a town that's like a Christmas town.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So we have a marriage counselor, and this marriage counselor, who's actually a star. She's one of the Hall stars. She's Sutton. She's a woman. She's on When Calls the Heart. It's Pascal Hutton. Pascal.
Oh, she's in the movie?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Pascal has a little, maybe I'm not supposed to tell you that.
Oh, that's
Maybe
cool.
She's our marriage counselor, and she says, you guys need to go. And she sends us to this place in Vermont. And when we're there, all we want to do is leave. We get there and we're like, this was a terrible idea. We got to go. And life, of course, does what it does in the Hallmark movies. And we were trapped through different reasons. We get trapped there, and we get there, and all we want to do is leave. We're like, this was a terrible idea. And we actually come to the conclusion early on in the movie that the best course of action for our marriage is to end it. When we talk about getting divorced and separating, and then as we pack up to go, events start to unravel.
Is that what kind of appealed to you, the idea of sort of telling a different type of story in one of these Christmas movies, being a married couple?
Yeah, I mean, Hallmark, last year they changed their, obviously they've been going through like different machinations of how they want to operate, and they're making some movie deals, like overall movie deals or whatever with some people, And they approached me early January last year and locked me in for a Christmas movie. They were like, we want to give you a deal for so that you're not going to do a Christmas movie anywhere else, but you'll be with us. And so I knew in January that I was going to work for them. And my objective was to get one in the can before I left for Cannes
Mhm.
when I went to France in May. And so there was this sort of movie that was floated around that was going to shoot in Winnipeg, and this was the script, and I read it and I liked it. So it really had more to do with the timing.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because they had other actresses that they were talking about having to do it, and the timing of their schedule didn't work, and luckily it worked for Marisol. So when Marisol jumped on board, we knew that we had a really fun little movie. And it didn't shoot in May. It actually shot when I got back from France. It shot in June in Winnipeg. But it had a lot to do with the timing of the film. Yeah.
So was it tough creating Vermont in I mean, I know they're pros at this, but in June
Winnipeg.
and was it super hot?
You know
Did you have
what's
to have
funny?
ice packs in your jackets and stuff?
Yeah, luckily it was early June, so it wasn't blistering yet, and it was Winnipeg, so it's Canada, so we're still north, so it wasn't terrible heat. And they're able to find these neighborhoods that just look quaint. And I think that's, if you have a quaint house, any Victorian style house will do.
Now, when you first started working with Marisol, did you kind of do like a chemistry together at all, or
no? It's funny. That's not how these work. They lock and load these actors, and they cast their lead man and their lead woman. Her name is Penny Perry, and she's this amazing casting director in Los Angeles. And I think that she's got little Barbie dolls of all of the actors that she likes to use, and she just stands them next to each other and she pairs them up. She's like, how will these two look together? Yeah, that'll work. Let's cast them. And I don't know how she does it, but she's got this little grab bag of actors that she pulls in, and we get paired up. As far as Marisol and I go, we went to dinner before we started shooting, and we just got to know each other that way. And then, what you do is you just talk about the script, and you just start breaking down characters. Like, did these two try to have a baby? Like, were there miscarriages? There was a decision not to have children? Like, you ask those questions so that you both have a common story, and that you build the background together, so that when you're on set, you can at least refer to like these like touchstones and say, well, this is why I'm angry at you, or this is why this isn't working, or remember, this is that thing that makes us both feel really good, and we like each other, and it reminds us. And then I'll tell you, Marisol, she's been working, man, I want to say since she was a teenager, and she's done really, really big projects, and she's worked with really big people and done really cool things. And working with a professional like that is fun, because she came to set every day with a head full of ideas that were wonderful. And my motto is best idea wins. And I also, as you can imagine, come to set with a lot of ideas in my head. And it was fun to just kind of collaborate. Again, it's a collaboration of sorts. And it took it, we found our rhythm, and there were some scenes that ended up being really beautiful. Because we took the time to just take a look at our surroundings, take a look at the scene. What did the story need? Yeah, and that's why I love the flexibility of working on Hallmark movies, because I think with, for example, Wonder Woman, or even Jurassic, like, you've got this plate that you've got to shoot. What the frame of the scene has to happen here. And you pay so much money to have the background and all of it. Like, everything that's on camera has been like paid for, but we're talking about like millions and millions of dollars, right? Whereas with Hallmark, you've got this environment that it's a barn, and the camera can look any direction, and the set deck is awesome, and they do the whole room. So now all of a sudden you're like, well, we have all this space, and it doesn't make any sense to like know what you're going to do before you get into the space. And so there's just this freedom to create And I love it. I mean, you walk in and you're like, well, that's really beautiful over there, like that little bench. What if we, what if the whole scene moves to that and we sit down and there's a whole thing here? And I mean, it just becomes a lot more freeing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting. I never heard that before, that the sort of the lower budget kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to move around in the scene and to make some choices.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it, because also I think the stakes are a lot lower, and because you don't have, think about it, like you're not sitting there going like, we just paid $10 million to have this beautiful staircase with the windows, and you're like, and this is our background, and it's different.
Yeah. Right.
You're also hammering it out. So anyone who has a great idea, everyone's happy to be like, great, if it works, let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm really looking forward to the movie. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to the Christmas season getting started here in October.
October 22nd. Are we, is there one on the 21st? And then we're on the 22nd?
So there's one called Noel something. I can't think. There's one with Natalie Hall. That's the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Friday night. And then we wish you a Merry Christmas is Saturday night, October 22nd.
Yeah, because when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, shouldn't this be on Movies and Mysteries? This sounds a little like, dramatic and everything. But then, like I said, I saw the teaser, the promo, and I was like, oh, okay, this looks there's like that scene with you at the top hat and little manic. So that looks fun.
What's funny, Samantha DePippo, who is one of she's the head of the Christmas movie department over at Hallmark. She's an incredible executive, super smart. And she was like, I want to see a pratfall. Like, let's, and I was like, I'll give you a pratfall. You want a pratfall? Yeah. So I will be in Reno, Nevada on October 22nd. And I'm the celebrity ambassador of a foundation called the Down Syndrome Network of Northern Nevada. And we're actually doing like an all-day family event. Like, it's called the Lucky Few Fall Festival. So if anybody who's out there watching is going to be in the Reno, Tahoe area on October 22nd, you want to come down. David DeSanctis from Where Hope Grows is going to be there with me. That movie that we did. It'll be a really fun. So that's a big day for me. We're going to go from the Lucky Fall, festival, and then that night the movie premieres, and so it'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, thanks so much for coming and talking with us, and with Anna as well, and good luck with the book and good luck with the movie, and you've got so much fun stuff going on. So congrats.
Thanks so much for having us, Rachel. We always love coming on your show.
Yeah. So where can people? When does the book become available? And I guess how can people follow you on socials and all that fun stuff?
Sure. So the book, Where the Sun Rises, is available October 11th, everywhere books are sold. And I would strongly recommend people call their local bookstore, like the actual brick and mortar store. Call ahead. Like, as soon as you hear this, go ahead and call your bookstore and order it so that it's pre-ordered and it'll be waiting for you. The next best thing would be to do it, go to Amazon and go ahead and order it from Amazon. They'll print it up for you and have it sent.
We'll have our affiliate link down below. So if you want to help the podcast, you can click on there too for our Amazon affiliate. So
that would be awesome. And then one of the biggest things for bespoke novelists are reviews. And so if you guys read this book on October 11th, if you wouldn't mind jumping onto Amazon and jumping onto Apple and writing a pithy little review, I would suggest writing it in your notes, and you can just copy and paste it to both places. But the reviews help the algorithm, and we rise up, and moments like this ended up on a couple lists last year, bestseller lists, as far as romance, and then for books based in Hawaii. And then Anna's Filipino, and so we had like an APOC, Nappy. We were on a list for Asian Pacific Islanders. So it'd be cool. It like helps. It helps. Helps push the sales forward. And that's kind of what this business is. It's really a word of mouth business, and it's about you reading it and being like, I love this book. You should read it. So that's the objective.
Yeah. Well, we think y'all should check it out. and we'll have all that information in the description. So thanks so much again, and hope you have a great holiday season.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. We'd like to thank Kristoffer and Anna for coming on the podcast. This was a blast to get to talk with them. And I hope y'all enjoy the book. I'll put all the information in the description of how you can get your own copy. And please make sure to put those reviews. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Kristoffer's absolutely right that those reviews make such a difference in people being able to find the podcast and getting in that algorithm. So please put your ratings and reviews 5 stars. It helps us so much on iTunes. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the patron group and merch store, so check that out. We've got lots of new festive designs up there. You definitely want to take a look. And thanks so much, everybody, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.